Namaste. Last time I had covered Kuja Stambhana and had discussed one case, that of John Lennon, and I thought of discussing a couple of more cases. Just to give a bit of recap, what do we mean by Kuja Stambhana? It is when Mars is having yoga with Rahu. Okay, this is a very direly malefic combination because Mars and Rahu have a terrible fight with each other. Okay, what we call in Hindi Ghamasan Yudh. It is very terrible fight. It's like the armies of the Devas and the Asuras fighting against each other. Okay, and Rahu has the capability or power of putting Stambhana or freezing, making Mars like a statue. Mars is stupefied and it is not able to move, and this agitates Mars quite a lot. And now, since Mars rules the 8th house of longevity, okay, this can impact the longevity by 8th house also means sudden occurrences through some sudden events like death, sudden disease, inexplicably sudden thing, and then the person dies very quickly, and this can result in an untimely death. Okay. Now, since we are talking of the 8th house, we got to look at the Karaka for the 8th house, and that is Saturn. Saturn is very important in providing longevity. If Saturn is strong in a chart, despite Mars Rahu yoga, it can provide some protection. Okay. Also, what matters is, are you going to die or is it about someone else in your chart? So for this we need to see if the Lagna is somehow associated with this Mars Rahu yoga. Otherwise, if the Lagna is not very strongly associated, then it may not really occur to you, but it may happen to someone else. Excuse me. Now, this is a chart of Anaïs Nin. She was a French writer, playwright, and a very famous person in the feminist movement in the, I think, 50s and 60s and thereabouts. She had written a lot of books. She has also written a lot of erotic stuff, in the lines of female empowerment and that kind of stuff. So, this is her chart. Now, this is having Kanya Lagna with Rahu and Mars in the Lagna. So, that is directly affecting the Lagna. Having said that, Rahu is also said to be lording Kanya Rashi. So, it is a Mars Rahu yoga within the Lagna. So, definitely this is impacting her in a big way. Okay, directly on her. So, immediately one would say, okay, how is the Karaka Saturn? How is the 8th house overall? The 8th Lord Mars is with Rahu. So, that is not a good sign. Otherwise, the 8th house itself per se is not having much of an issue directly. There is no malefic planet over here or any malefic drishti. In fact, rather the drishti of Mars strengthens the 8th house. Okay. On top of that, we find that Saturn is in own sign and very strong. Okay. So that is definitely a big blessing over here, one would say. Having said that, Saturn also is giving Graha dosha to this sign, but that can have some other impact. So, in this case, the likelihood of a sudden death seems very unlikely over here. Rather, because there is a Graha dosha due to Saturn on Kanya Lagna, Mars is the 8th Lord, nevertheless. And that would mean that she can suffer a disease, because 8th house is also about disease. Okay, and see, when Saturn is in own sign, we also tend to look at its exaltation lord. That is, since Saturn exalts in the sign of Libra, we look at Venus. Now, Venus is Atmakaraka over here, that is good, but it is in the 6th house, and in the 6th house, Venus is said to be in Marana Karakasthana. It is conjoined Jupiter, which seems to be, one would say, good, but unfortunately, this Jupiter is Badhaka Lord, Badhakesh over here. I just want to see the degrees. So Jupiter is combust. So anyway, Jupiter is a combust Badaka, so it's not very good that it is aspecting, it is conjoining Venus. But since it's still a Guru Shukra Yoga is a good thing, so it's a mixed bag over here. So as long as she keeps Venus positive, and Venus would look for purity and all that, and see, this happens in the sign of Rahu again, because this is Aquarius, and Rahu is the dispositor in this yoga. So while Saturn is trying to improve the situation, but eventually it is showing that she may suffer a major disease, and she did suffer disease. She suffered what is known as cervical cancer. Now cancer is clearly coming due to Jupiter. Jupiter is what is very important indicator of cancer, because cancer is somewhere where there is uncontrollable or undesirable growth of certain cells, right? And Jupiter is expansion, Jupiter is the growth of that, and Jupiter is the Badakesha over here in the 6th house with Marnakaraka Venus, and it is combust. So that is all not a good sign, and its dispositor Rahu is in this Mars Rahu Yoga. And why cervical, one may say, if you see, Venus is related to reproductive organs and all that, hormones and reproductive organs, the Jala aspect, and cervical cancer is related to the reproductive organs, related to the vagina and urethra, etc., and it is due to that. In fact, there's also one thing, that cervical cancer largely happens due to sexual interactions, and she was quite sexually a promiscuous person, or at least pretty active person that way. So it is very much possible that it happened due to that. So she should have tried to keep Venus positive, but unfortunately, due to all these associations, that was very tough in happening. Okay. In the Navamsha, I mean, assuming this Navamsha is right, I haven't corrected it. Jupiter is the 12th lord, and Saturn, as you can see, the other problem is Saturn in Navamsha is debilitated. So Saturn, while it is strong in the Rashi chart, it is debilitated in the Navamsha. That is not good. So ultimately, Saturn is going to cause a problem. If those who know Chakradasha, they will. I mean, she died in her 74th year. I believe that comes over here in Aries, and yeah, you can see that Mars is directly linked to this. Okay, Mars having Drishti also. It's her 8th house. So this was the case where there was not a sudden death, but yet it caused a very tough disease. All treatments, she got the best treatments, but she could not come out of it. She suffered for it for over 2 years. It would have started somewhere, I think, over here or here in terms of Sudarshan Chakradasha, and she died over here. So this was an Ace-Nin, and I'll present one other chart. This is of Lord Tennyson, who was the first Lord Tennyson rather. He was knighted because of his achievements in the field of poetry and literature. He was a very noted poet. In this case, we have Mars and Rahu in the 5th house. We may say, okay, Venus is in the Lagna, but you see, it's not conjoined with this Mars and Rahu yoga. Okay, so per se, it is not directly affecting him. Mercury has no link to this. Mercury is a Lagnesha, nor Rahu is just having an aspect, but that is not good enough, one would say, to cause direct harm to him. But it is in the 5th house, and that can cause harm to the children. Okay, it's not necessary that all the children be affected. It can be one particular child. Okay. Saturn is in again a Dushthan over here in the 6th house. Okay, but otherwise Saturn is not particularly weak. In fact, Saturn in 6th house is good for his longevity, but again it is second from the 5th house, so it's not good for the children per se. Okay. Let's see the Saptamsha. Okay. So in now I'll share with you, in his case, actually it was his second child who passed away due to this. His second son passed away very suddenly, and in fact that son was more than 30 years old and was already married, had children as well. He had gone to India. He was working in India at that time. This was during colonial times, and he was coming back from India when he, I think, contracted malaria and died, I think, while en route in the ship itself. Okay, so it was a very sudden and unexpected death. So I've just presented the Saptamsha over here, but one would have to explain how to read Saptamsha and all that to see this point of how it is the second son and not the first son. As you can see over here, the second child would be coming from this sign of Sagittarius over here, and the lord of that is Moon, Jupiter, which is well placed with Moon over here, but it is having an aspect of Mars. Okay, and this sign is having an aspect of Rahu. Okay, and the dispositor of this is also Mars. This is Aries sign and dispositor is Mars. So this is, and in fact one would say that Mars and Rahu are having a kind of, they are on either side of this 7th house. So it is like a Papa Kartari, one would say. So the Mars Rahu is yoga is actually closely associated with the second child, not with the first child. So he had two sons. It was the second son who passed away. Okay, so this was so you got to, the key point over here is you got to confirm in the particular divisional chart also. So here in this divisional chart there are some not so great combinations. If you can see, Sun and Saturn are aspecting the 7th house, and Mars and Rahu are also giving, so 4 malefics are affecting this sign. Okay, and that is the second child. Okay, the first child comes from here, Libra, and that is not having that much. In fact, Jupiter Moon are giving good drishti over here. Lord Venus is in a good sign, beneficial sign. So it is not that much of a problem. Okay, Venus can definitely fight Mars and Rahu aspects, and anyway Venus is not having a yoga with Rahu as such. Okay, it's just maybe with Mars as only. Okay, so this is how one reads. One has to also confirm it in the divisional chart. So this is a small presentation on Kuja Stambhana. Hope it was a useful one, and please do see the first part if you haven't seen it, because that would give you some more understanding of how to read it. Okay, thank you so much. Namaste.